Back with another video for you today. I recently received a question on Instagram asking me how I store my fragrances. So I got to thinking, which actually I've been thinking for quite a while, that I would love to have a kind of a channel where you guys can send me questions and I pick and choose questions that I'd love to answer and perhaps do videos about. So today we're going to talk about how you can store your fragrances so that they can be preserved and stay as fresh and as great smelling as you can for the longest time. So if you want to find out about how to store your fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. If this is your first time tuning into the channel and you love watching fragrance reviews, finding out about new fragrances, discovering new brands, and of course participating in giveaways and still haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So first off, I want to say I know you guys were asking me about the hats recently, and I'm wearing it right now, and I have them here. So I am selling the hats. If any of you want to purchase a hat, in USA these are shipped for $40 each, and if you're interested, the email address is manlovescologne@gmail.com. Friends and family payment, please. And they'll be shipped as soon as I get the payment, well, the next day after. So these are really nice hats, and they're really, really quality. And it does say Perfume on it, as you can see. So if you're interested, just let me know that you're sending me the money. And of course, you can also email me at that same email address, your email address, of course, which I'll see, but your shipping address, and then as soon as I receive the payment, I'll package it up and I ship it for you. And some of you have been asking me, and in fact I've sold several already, and I haven't really created a page to sell them yet, but pretty soon I will have those on a page, but they are for sale now and I've got several to sell. So anyway, that's the hat issue. But wanted to go back to this question about how to store fragrances. So a follower of mine from Instagram wrote to me, DJ Onash1, and asked me, question, hi, I love your channel. How do you store your fragrances? Dark or in light? Does it make a difference? And so I got to thinking, you know what, it's time to do these question themed videos, because a lot of you have these questions to ask, and I'm here to answer for you. So if you have any questions that you'd like answered that I've never spoken about, or any topics or anything, or any anything like comparing fragrances to others that I go through the questions and want to answer in a whole video, then you can send a email to lfsgquestions@gmail.com, and there I can see which questions that I know about or can do a video about, and I will do the video and answer it that way. So how do you store your fragrances? Well, I've been doing the fragrance thing since 2012, really extremely. But prior to that, I was not doing it cautiously or extremely. I was just kind of like passively doing fragrances, even though I was really, really obsessed with smells and things like that. So during that time, I'd have fragrances go bad on me because I wasn't wearing them a lot. I wasn't, sharing them with relatives. It would be just like several bottles I had for myself. So I'd run into some issues and things like that. But the thing is, there are fragrances that I have that I bought, and also people have sent to me that are still in perfect condition. So there are ways for you to be able to preserve the fragrance and have it smell great for years and years and years. In fact, I know a lot of people who love vintage fragrances, vintage perfumes from decades ago, and they buy them, and not 9 out of 10, but very close. They have fragrances that still smell great. The only issues that I think they run into are the top notes are kind of like not good. They've kind of like become bad, and especially since top notes tend to be citruses, those are the first things to go bad. But like the heart notes and then of course the base notes of a fragrance will typically last a long time, but citruses definitely go bad first in a fragrance. So if it's a freshie, then those are the ones that usually go bad if they're not stored correctly or perfectly. And the thing I want to say is, here's a fragrance that I have that's a vintage bottle from 2001, and I bought it around 2002. Well, actually, I should say, the first bottle I bought was in 2001. I was on a trip to New Orleans, and I went to Saks there, and I fell in love with Hermes Eau d'Orange Vert. And this is the vintage bottle here, and this is a second bottle I bought in 2001, no, 2002 or 2003, and the fragrance still smells great. In fact, this version is much better than the original current formulation of Eau d'Orange Vert. But to me, this smells like the concentrated version of Eau d'Orange Vert that's currently in production from Hermes. This is an old looking bottle, as you can see. It's a kind of a little worn out, but I've kept it in a very, very cool, dark and dry place, and it smells great. And it's like 17 years old, maybe close to 18 years old that I've had this bottle, and I think it smells great. Let me go ahead and quickly spray it. In fact, this fragrance, as I said, it does remind me more of the concentrated version of the Hermes Eau d'Orange Vert. And back then, I don't think they had two versions. They only had this original version. So they reformulated it around the early 2010s, I believe. And they came up with the original version and then the concentrated version. And to me, this, in its original form, reminds me of the concentrated version, which currently I only own the concentrated version. So if you can see this is a purchase from 2002, 2003, and it still smells great today. It smells like I remember it when I first discovered it in the heat of summer in New Orleans. When I bought this, I was wearing it like there was no tomorrow. So the fragrances can last. A few more things I want to talk to you about. This is a fragrance that was launched in the mid-90s. It's from Givenchy Insensé, and this was sent to me about 4 years ago. So it was launched in 1995, somewhere in the mid-90s, and it was immediately discontinued because it was a complete flop. But the fragrance itself is amazing. So it was sent to me in 2015, around there somewhere, and at that time it smelled great. And to me, it still smells great. It smells like what I remember smelling back then. So this is 20 plus years, like almost 25 years old since the fragrance was distributed or manufactured and then sent to retailers. So it was kept in a perfect condition, and it still smells like I remember smelling it. Nothing is worn off here, none of the top notes or anything like that. So if you store your fragrances in good conditions, fragrances will last. Here's another one. This is another one that was sent to me. It's a vintage Guerlain Derby. And this one seems like it might have a little bit of something wrong with it, but this bottle is pretty old. I mean, it could be like 30 years old. Let me know if you guys know how old that bottle is. Unfortunately, it's not spraying. There it goes. To me, it smells like a more concentrated version of the original Derby. Nothing is off. I mean, I'm assuming faintly there's some little touches of the fragrance that's off a little bit, but it smells pretty darn amazing. Here's another fragrance that was sent to me, but M7 in its original formulation. Smells like the original M7. It smells awesome. This came out originally in 2001, so this bottle is probably from the late 2010s. No, 2000s, or even like the mid 2000s, so it still smells amazing. So fragrances can last if you store them perfectly. So what does it take? For me, the three key words for keeping your fragrances or making your fragrances last: cool, dark, and dry. So those are the most important things you can do to your fragrances for them to last. And absolutely no bathrooms. So at the beginning of the video, I remember, if you remember, I told you that before I got into this as a really intense hobby, I didn't really care about fragrances. So at that time, I used to put fragrances in bathrooms, which is an absolute no-no. If you have your fragrances in your bathrooms, take them away, take them out of the bathrooms right away, because it absolutely should not be in the bathrooms. The reason you shouldn't keep it in bathrooms is humidity. It gets hot in the bathrooms. You turn on and take baths in hot water, the steam, all that kind of stuff absolutely a no-no. Absolutely no for your fragrances. The frequency of the showers and the baths you take, that fragrance is going to go bad. And of course, you'll start smelling it. The top notes are the first things to go, and come back a year later. The way fragrances work is you wear a fragrance over and over again, you get another one, and you put that one aside and don't come back to it. You leave it in the bathroom, and then like a year later, you reach for that fragrance you forgot about and you take it. It's like the color's gone. Like the color's gotten darker. The humidity and the steam and all that kind of stuff has made the fragrance completely go bad. As far as the top notes go, sometimes depending on the fragrance, whatever's in the base still smells great, but as soon as you spray it, the initial spray can be off and you'd be like, what the heck is wrong with this? So that is an absolute no-no. But for me, the key is cool, dark, and dry. Also, if you're working with cool, dark, and dry, keep it or avoid heaters. So let's say you have a dark, dry closet, but it's right next to a heater. I would actually absolutely avoid that space. The heater is what's going to kill your fragrance. So that's an absolute no-no. So if it's close by, so you turn it on and turn it off, turn it on and turn it off, that's going to kind of make your fragrances not stay in the perfect condition. So absolutely avoid any kind of heat. And also I would say consistent temperature. Those are like really, really important. So I live in San Francisco, and I don't have an issue with fragrances going bad too much because we don't have, our temperatures here are very mild. Even though California can get really, really hot, our temperatures here are always like very, very consistent. We have really cool days and cool nights, but lately, of course, with global warming, it is heating up a lot more. We are having really, really hot days, but I keep my fragrances in cool, dark, and dry place, of course. Currently here, I'm in a studio now, and the entire collection is here. And this is a very dark studio space, and it's really cool, and it's very airy. So when I'm not here, blinds and everything is dark. No lights on, so it's almost very, very dark here, and that's the kind of place I like to keep the fragrance, and of course the consistent temperature. So some of you live in like really, really dramatic temperature areas. So you have conditions that go from like upwards of 100 degrees down to like 60 degrees. So that's fluctuation is really, really bad for your fragrances. So if it's a home you have and you are a collector, and you know, keep your temperature in the house consistent if you can afford it, of course, because that fluctuating temperature is what's going to really be bad on your fragrances. So if you can't do that, and I guess the next thing if you can't keep your temperature consistent in the house or wherever you store your fragrances, I guess the next best thing for you to do is keep your fragrances in a refrigerator. I've heard a lot of people keeping their fragrances in refrigerators. In fact, I have been given fragrances in these canisters that are pre-bottled in perfume bottles, and I was given those fragrances from various brands, and I've actually bought fragrances that come in those containers, and I'm also from various friends and things like that. So I keep those in the fridge. I don't keep them out, and whenever I feel like using up the fragrance, I grab a little and put it in a atomizer and then keep it, but the rest of it stays in the fridge. So the fridge is a very consistent temperature, and it's going to be perfect for your fragrances, especially if your fragrances, as I said, are citruses. And you know, you put citrus fragrances, citrus fruits in the fridge, of course. So I mean, they're not going to go bad in the fridge. So that's the consistency. And a lot of people tend to use wine coolers for fragrances as well. So if you have a big fragrance collection and you can get yourself a big wine cooler, wine refrigerator, then that's a great place for you to keep your fragrances, because that temperature is going to be consistent, and of course your fragrances are not going to go bad on you. I mean, they just won't. That's why they have wine coolers, because wine is something that needs to be temperature controlled, and so then put the wine in a temperature controlled refrigerator or a temperature controlled room, and then it'll be fine in that room. So those are some of the things that I recommend. But the other thing I recommend is, for me, when I was in a house before I moved into the studio to store the fragrances, I still live in the house obviously, but closet is the best place to store. And if you have a closet that's not close to a heater or any kind of a heating device, and it stays really cool and dry and dark in there, that's the best place. I know a lot of people like to display their fragrances, but what would you rather have? The displaying of the fragrances, or a saving of your fragrances so they last a lifetime? Because once again, I'll say, I know a lot of people that collect vintage fragrances, and they score great smelling fragrances, like my friend Dahlia and my friend Dana. They both love vintage fragrances, and they buy a lot of vintage fragrances, and they freaking are in perfect condition. So if you keep your fragrances in perfect condition, then you are able to, you know, save those fragrances and they'll last a lifetime. So closets are always great, especially if you have like long clothes hanging in the closet, and behind the clothes, the coolest spot, the driest spot, the darkest spot is probably the best place to store your fragrances. And you can always, like, you know, pull over the hanging clothes and reach over to your fragrances that you want to wear, and then you cover it up and close your closet. That's my favorite spot. I think for the fragrances to be stored, and you might have a separate thing, but you might have a temperature controlled closet, or if you don't have that, you might be using a refrigerator, because a lot of people have refrigerators, not one but two or three in their homes, and we can have one dedicated to perfumes if you are able to find an inexpensive refrigerator, and then there you can kind of fluctuate and figure out what temperature works the best for those fragrances. And the best part about it, in the summertime, when you take out those fragrances to spray and they're all cold, and when they hit your body, you get that really cold and cooling sensation, not only from the notes of the fragrance, but also the temperature of the fragrance. A couple of other things that I should mention also. Okay, original bottles versus decants. I think what's going to last longer are original bottles. So keep your fragrances in their original bottles, and if you have decants, those are the ones that are going to go bad the fastest, because they've already have been decanted, they've gone through the air, and they're in a bottle that's not like tight. So those are the ones that are going to go bad fast. So if you are those types that buy decants, use those up before you use up your bottles, obviously, because those don't last as long as the bottles, because those decants are not sealed 100%. So that's one thing. So the original bottles are always better to store and last longer, but then again, if you store your decants in cool places, they'll still last, but still I think they won't last as long as the original bottles. A couple other things: keep your caps on your bottles, just for any kind of light or air to go inside your bottle. Caps are always perfect to have on your bottles, and if you're storing them and you want to store them in boxes that it came in, that's even better, because if you have a huge collection, you're not wearing all these fragrances all the time, so you want to put them in the original boxes. And some of these fragrances nowadays come in these really elaborate coffrets and really like gift type of boxes. If you have those, put them in there and store them in there. You got double the darkness, and so those fragrances are going to last a long time. So if you don't have the boxes, grab some like cardboard boxes, or somewhere you can store multiple fragrances inside the boxes, depending on what size they are, and then you can put them away in your dark, dry, and cool closet inside those boxes, and you have two types of darkness concealing your bottles. Some more information: discoloration. So a lot of people ask me when I do videos and they see the bottle I'm holding up, they go, "Oh my god, your bottle is a lot lighter than my bottle," and I wonder what's causing it. There's a couple of things that could be causing this. First of all, maybe perhaps it was reformulated, but most of the time, if you have a darker bottle versus the one I'm using, it's because it's a brand new bottle. It could be because of the temperature, and the fragrance must have hit the heat, and the heat kind of makes the fragrance concentrated. And even I have myself noticed from one bottle to another of the same fragrance, the color change in fragrances. So when it hits the heat or humidity or steam, the the juice in the fragrance is going to get a lot more concentrated, and also a lot of it is going to turn darker. So juice can go dark because of the heat and humidity. So a lot of times, like I said, you guys ask me, why is my bottle of juice in the fragrance that I'm reviewing is lighter than others? Most of the time I think it's because of the heat. Perhaps your fragrance that you purchased was not stored correctly and the juice has gotten darker, or if it's not that, then it could be reformulation. But overall, I think fragrances can last a really, really long time. It's proven. I know a lot of people that collect vintage fragrances, and most of the time I smell these fragrances and they smell phenomenal. Like, the fragrances of the old days are not like what they used to be, what they are now. They used to be a lot better. Amazing stuff back in the day. But it's proven they can last if stored properly: cool, dry, and dark. Those are the three conditions you need to be aware of for your fragrances. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing else you can do. If you live in like the dramatic temperature zones, just temperature control and consistent temperature all the time. And I think personally, if you are a collector in those very dramatic temperature zones, get yourself a fridge and store your fragrances in a fridge if you can afford it. Otherwise, try and figure out a way to temperature control your house or wherever you have your fragrances, so that the fragrances will last long, long time. Anyway, that's my thoughts on how to store your fragrances. Thank you, DJ Onash1, for this question. And once again, guys, if you have a question for me, you can send those questions lfsgquestions@gmail.com. And as I get these questions and I feel that it's necessary to do a video about it, I will do it. In fact, if I think that it should be combined into a video with multiple questions, I will do that as well. But that's pretty much it for how to store your fragrances. And once again, if you are interested in the baseball hats that says Perfume on it, you can always email manlovescologne, manlovescologne @gmail.com. $40, friends and family. Then email your name, address, phone number, email address to the same email address, and I will get the hat off to you and also send you the tracking number. Other than that, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.